Well, let's go back to one of our big stories of the day, and it's the case against 8 police officers accused of assaulting members of the public, which has now been postponed until Wednesday. These officers made their first appearance at the Randburg Magistrate's Court, where they applied for bail. They are part of Deputy President Paul Mashatile's VIP protection unit, and they were caught on camera assaulting 3 young men on the N1 highway in Johannesburg earlier in the month. The DA is accusing the Deputy President of lying and of misleading the country. We'll find out that, and we'll also find out what happened in court today with our SABC News reporter, Mbalenhle Mthethwa. Mbalenhle, good evening to you and welcome. I think it was a day, safe to say, that everyone, especially those who had an interest in the story, were really interested to see how it would develop and what would happen. Let's just maybe deal with one of the issues because a lot of questions about why are they masked? Why are they hooded? Is this allowed in court?
Well, certainly. I think this was one of those conditions that were set out for the media. You will remember that various media houses made an application before the Magistrate's Court just to find out if they can bring live proceedings of the proceedings in court. And the conditions were that because their identity, if they are exposed, could really put the people they protect's life in jeopardy. So they can then keep their masks on. They were advised to keep their masks on just to protect their identity and also to protect the security details around the different ministers and officials that they protect.
Some might say, the horse is bolted because it was a viral video. Maybe some of them you couldn't see as clearly, but certainly some of them were identifiable. So run us through, some of the big features of this appearance in court today.
Well, the biggest thing that has come out today is that there's been a suggestion that Deputy President Paul Mashatile may have been present at the time of the incident. You will remember that there was that video that went viral on social media of his security personnel assaulting ordinary civilians on the highway. Now, after that, it seems as though we saw a statement coming out of the office of the Deputy President saying that he was nowhere near the scene at the time and he wasn't there, and that these officials or the officers were acting on their own. But today, there's been a suggestion that they were acting on a threat. The first accused took the stand in the bail hearing, and he then alluded to the fact that they had received an alert to watch out for a blue Polo Vivo. And this was because this Polo Vivo was seemingly moving from one lane and coming all the way to the fast lane where these vehicles were. And because they acted as though, or they thought that this was a threat, they then tried to isolate them from the principal. And by the principal, it means that the Deputy President Paul Mashatile might have been in one of the cars, and this is why they had to then isolate this particular vehicle. But in the statements that were presented by the victims of the crime that was read out in court, they said that they thought and believed that they were being hijacked because they saw a vehicle behind them and someone pointing a rifle at them, and they were not sure if they need to stop or they want to move to the next lane, or they just didn't know what to do. And then before they knew it, there was another vehicle in front of them which had sandwiched them and isolated them, which really corresponds with what the first accused has said in court this morning.
And that's in fact what Daniel Elof, who's one of the lawyers for the victims, was saying. If there were some clues that were given in what went on in that bail application hearing today that kind of changed the story a little bit. These officers apparently used the word nuisance as well, that these, the people in the vehicle were seen to have been a nuisance on the road.
Well, I have to correct that because they were not necessarily seen as a nuisance. This is a question that was posed by the magistrate this morning when asked, when really just getting more information on the statement and just trying to get background information, saying that, did the protection services unit respond in the manner they did because they thought the vehicle in front of them was a nuisance, or if they thought, or whether they thought this vehicle was a threat? And that question was then answered in the proceedings later on in the day after lunch, when the first accused took the stand and then alluded to the fact that they had been alerted to somewhat of a threat. And this is why they then responded in the manner that they were, because they were protecting protecting the country's number 2.
So that's interesting, and then it ties in with what the DA is now trying to pursue. To share a bit on that.
Certainly. Well, the DA was there. We understand that the provincial chairperson, Solim Simanga, was in court this morning and throughout the day, really just following proceedings. And he is now calling for accountability, saying that it is rather misleading of the Office of the President to issue a statement alleging that the Deputy President was nowhere near the site of the scene or where the incident took place, and that these officials acted on their own, when in fact they were acting on instruction, not necessarily his instruction, but on instruction to protect him. And it seems as though, based on this evidence, or the testimony rather, not evidence yet, but on the testimony that we've heard today, is that after the incident they drove to the Deputy President's home. And, you know, if they drove to the Deputy President's home, it would suggest that they were taking him home. And this is what these are the connections we can make for now, until we have more information and more information comes forward following the proceedings. We do understand that the bail hearing has been postponed till Wednesday, and we do expect to hear more from the different accused as they, you know, state their case and apply for bail.
Yeah, Mbalenhle, thanks also for clarifying that, because that's indeed what we heard on the program a little bit earlier on. But, you know, should it be found that there was lying and there was deceit, and in fact, you know, this had happened, that he was actually present, it might have some serious repercussions, you know, on the integrity of his office.
Well, certainly. I mean, that's what the DA is trying to do in calling for accountability, and they are willing to go as far as the legislature, or even as far as bringing it up in Parliament for the Deputy President to respond to this. And, you know, the DA is the official opposition party in South Africa, so they are present. They do have seats in all these different bodies of government.
Interesting stuff. Mbalenhle, thank you very much for sharing the latest with us from court. Our SABC News reporter, Mbalenhle Mthethwa.